Welcome back to Panda's Nightmares. Tonight, we're stepping away from the spooky and diving into something a little lighter, but still just as unforgettable. Get ready for a collection of the most embarrassing stories people have ever shared. From cringe-worthy moments to hilarious disasters, these tales will make you laugh, cringe, and maybe even feel a little better about your own awkward moments. Before we get started, I want to share something important. I'm raising funds for my dad's medical treatment, and your support would mean the world to me. If you'd like to help, the GoFundMe link is in the description below. Thank you for being here. And now, let's dive into the wonderfully awkward world of embarrassing stories. Story 1. When I was 13, a doctor prescribed me an adult dose of a certain medicine based on my weight. I was a chubby kid, and it turns out our bodies don't exactly work that way. The medicine ended up constipating me for an entire month. I didn't poop for a whole month. It was hell. I started getting sick, with dark circles under my eyes, random stomach spasms, and relentless cramps. I was miserable. Finally, I told my parents how long it had been since I'd had a bowel movement. They freaked out and rushed me to the hospital. Once there, the doctors gave me 3 enemas back to back. By the third one, it was enough to loosen up the blockade, and I felt the urge to go immediately. I dashed to the nearest bathroom, hospital gown flapping in the back. But here's where it went sideways. I didn't make it. I was hovering above the toilet at a 45-degree angle when the dam broke. And I'm not exaggerating, it was like a geyser. Somehow, I managed to get shit everywhere. On the walls, the floor, the ceiling. Even the sink wasn't spared. The entire bathroom looked like a shit-covered war zone. It was chaos, literal chaos. Afterward, I felt like a new person, as if I'd just been reborn. But then reality hit. There was no way I could clean up that mess myself. I sheepishly told a nurse, as politely as I could, the bathroom needs some serious cleaning. The janitor wasn't far away, and I watched as he walked past me to the bathroom. A moment later, the entire R heard him shout, "Oh hell no. I ain't cleaning this up. I quit," and he did. To this day, I still feel bad. I made some poor janitor quit his job because of my catastrophic bathroom experience. Story 2. My most embarrassing moment happened during a summer I spent working at a camp. I was the camp runner, the guy responsible for driving into town whenever something was needed. At night, I shared a room with about 10 other guys, and the bathrooms were always crowded and chaotic. As a result, I'd gone the entire summer completely abstinent. One day, I got a call to take a camper to urgent care after she'd been bitten by a spider. Since camp policy required an adult of the same gender to accompany campers on trips like this, one of the counselors, a girl I'd talked to a few times and found pretty cute, came along for the ride. She knew I was running on little sleep and offered to drive since she had the proper camp clearance and knew the route. I gratefully accepted and climbed into the passenger seat, figuring I could catch up on some rest during the long drive into town. Big mistake. At some point, I fell asleep, and when I woke up, disaster struck. My dick was hard as a rock, and to make matters worse, the head was poking out of the leg of my shorts. Before I could fully register what was happening, I felt a surge of pressure, and God help me, proceeded to ejaculate all over the glove compartment door. As if that wasn't mortifying enough, I immediately heard a shriek from the driver's seat, and the camper yelling, "Oh God, holy shit, no." My stomach sank as I turned to see both of them staring at me, their faces beet red. The car fell into an excruciating silence, broken only by the sound of me desperately trying to clean up the mess with an old McDonald's bag. The rest of the drive was unbearable. When we finally reached the urgent care, I practically bolted out of the car to let them handle the situation inside, while I tried to process what had just happened. Later, I had a conversation with the counselor about the incident. Apparently, I'd been visibly hard for at least 10 minutes while I was asleep. They both noticed but were too embarrassed to wake me up, which only made the situation that much worse for all of us. To this day, it remains the most humiliating moment of my life. Nothing else even comes close. Story 3. When I was 15, I was at Sam's Club with my parents. I wandered off to the video game section and started playing a demo on a PS2. While engrossed in the game, I felt the urge to let out a fart. Confident it would be silent, I gave it a gentle push. Sure enough, it made no sound, but within seconds, the air around me reeked. I smugly thought, wow, I did some real damage with that one. But then, my younger sister, who was 7 at the time, came up to me and said, "Where did you get the chocolate milk? And how did you spill it on your leg?" Confused, I looked down. To my horror, I saw liquid feces running down my leg. I was wearing blue Nike shorts and boxers, and it was clear the situation had escalated far beyond a simple fart. Panicked, I casually walked to the bathroom, trying not to draw attention. Once in a stall, I started cleaning myself up and assessing the damage. The mess was awful, but my immediate concern became what to do with my soiled boxers. Keeping them wasn't an option. No way was I riding home with that in the car. Leaving them in the stall felt inconsiderate, especially since there were other people waiting. My only solution: flush them. Big mistake. Boxers do not flush well. The toilet backed up, flooding the stall and spilling water and remnants into the rest of the bathroom. Just as I thought the nightmare couldn't get worse, a janitor entered the restroom. I froze. Trying to act natural, I cleaned up as best I could and stepped out of the stall. The janitor, clearly annoyed, asked what had happened, but I couldn't bring myself to explain. I mumbled something and hurried out, leaving the still visible boxes behind. Meanwhile, outside the bathroom, my parents had realized I was missing. My sister, in her innocent attempt to help, told them she'd seen me head toward the bathroom with an older man. This sent my parents into a panic. They alerted store management and security, fearing the worst. Back in the bathroom, the janitor was investigating the carnage I'd left behind. As I tried to exit discreetly, I bumped into the manager, who was rushing to assess the supposed missing child situation. When he stopped me, I figured he'd discovered the flooded stall and was there to confront me. Flustered, I blurted out there was an incident in the restroom. To him, that confirmed his fears of something sinister involving the mysterious old man. He radioed security to call the police. By now, my parents had found me and were frantic. "Are you okay?" they asked. I was too embarrassed to explain and mumbled, "I'm fine." Security then asked me if he's still in there. I had no idea what they were talking about. With everyone staring, I broke down and confessed. I had an accident. I pooped my pants and tried to flush my underwear. It clogged the toilet. The room fell silent for a moment before the sheer absurdity of the situation sank in. The manager, security, and my parents just stared at me. Then the police arrived. Yes, actual police. I had to tell them the whole humiliating story. When it became clear there was no old man or crime, the mood shifted. Everyone was laughing at my expense. To this day, my dad loves to bring it up at family gatherings, holidays, and even my wedding. I don't think I'll ever live it down. Story 4. I decided to surprise my wife with an early birthday gift, a smartphone. Her first ever. She'd been using one of those old indestructible Nokia phones forever, and I thought it was time to bring her into the 21st century. Now she could enjoy all the perks of data, social networking, GPS, and everything else the modern world offers. Her actual birthday rolls around, and I realize I've got nothing planned for the day itself. After the usual morning routine of showering and brushing my teeth, inspiration strikes. I'll spice things up with a little humor. I go full Chippendales, oil all over me, tie, and some shirt cuffs, but absolutely nothing else. Feeling confident, I call her back into the room to reveal my look. She's rolling on the floor laughing, absolutely loving it. For posterity, she snaps a picture with her shiny new phone. Later, we head out for some fishing. We catch a few, head home, and I fillet and cook up what looks like a gourmet meal. She's impressed and, feeling proud, decides to take another picture with her phone, this time of the beautifully plated fish. The day winds down. She heads to bed, but not before uploading some pictures to Facebook, eager to show off the day's events. I stay up, unwinding with some PC gaming. Then it happens. She mistakenly uploads my Chippendales photo instead of the meal, titling it, Dinner Yum. Unaware of her error, she heads off to bed. A few minutes later, I hear her screaming and sprinting through the house. She bursts into the room where I'm gaming, panicked, and forcefully kicks me off the computer. Confused, I glanced at the screen, and there it is me. Fully nude except for the tie and cuffs, grinning on Facebook for all to see. 2 comments are already there. She manages to delete the post after a frantic scramble, but we think the ordeal is over. It wasn't. Turns out, while she deleted the post, the photo itself had been auto-uploaded to the mobile uploads album. By the time we realize this, about 13 hours later, it's too late. There are already more comments. Friends are cracking jokes, and family is expressing disapproval. We finally deleted for good, but the damage is done. Lesson learned: double-check everything before uploading, and maybe keep the Chippendales moments offline. Story 5. When I was in the Navy, I was standing watch in the engine room during a reactor safety workup. For those unfamiliar with submarines, you lose all sense of day or night pretty quickly. Combine that with endless drills and a tired engineering department, and it was pure exhaustion all around. Halfway through my 6-hour watch, nature called, and by called, I mean it was banging on the door with a battering ram. But I didn't want to wake anyone up to relieve me just so I could relieve myself. So, like a true hero, I held it. For 3 grueling hours. By the time my relief arrived, my gut was staging a full-blown mutiny. I barely managed a thanks before sprinting down the passageway toward salvation. Now, submarines are not exactly designed for emergency bathroom situations. There's a watertight hatch separating the engine room from the forward compartment, which is about 2 feet off the deck too high to just shuffle through. As I approach, my body is actively rebelling, and it's taking everything in my power to clench harder than a vice grip. I undog the hatch, a process that takes a few seconds and an eternity in moments like this. Lift one leg through, and that's when my body decides it's had enough. The floodgates open, and chaos ensues. It's like a torpedo launch except, instead of a clean strike, it's rolling down my leg, out of my coveralls, and onto the deck. My watch team, standing behind me, freezes in horror as this unholy mess unfolds. In the most awkward tone I've ever heard myself use, I managed to mutter a single word: oopsies. Now, engineers are a practical bunch. I reach into my back pocket, grab the rag I always carry, and awkwardly scoop up the evidence while maintaining a straight-legged stance to prevent further disaster. My cheeks are doing their best impression of a hydraulic clamp, and I'm praying I can at least make it to the head before any more damage occurs. The first room I pass through on my way forward is the mess deck, the absolute worst place to parade through with my shame. Of course, it's packed with off-duty crew eating whatever meal is being served. Every fork pauses mid-air as dozens of eyes track me and my little bundle of shame. I head straight for the trash, hoping to quietly dispose of it and disappear. But no, my buddy, standing dead center of the mess deck, points at me and yells, "Hey Mikey, WTF are you doing? You can't throw shit in the trash." He's not wrong either. On subs, trash gets compacted and jettisoned. Anything with liquid. Nope, it could ooze out and spray the poor soul operating the compactor. So there I am, standing in the middle of the mess deck, a literal piece of shit in my hand, while half the crew folks hovering mid-air stares at me. That, ladies and gentlemen, was the single most embarrassing moment of my life. Story 6. In 2009, I was heading back to Iraq after a 2-week R&R. Every time I returned from the US, I'd have the worst diarrhea for about 2 weeks. This time, it went beyond the usual. After 3 relentless weeks of liquid hell pouring out of me, I decided enough was enough. I went to the military hospital in the Green Zone to see if they could help. The waiting area was filled with people dealing with serious injuries. When my turn came, I explained my situation to the medics. Instead of empathy, they mocked me mercilessly. "Oh, you got a poopy problem. Oh, does your little butthole hurt?" They jeered loud enough for everyone in the room to hear. Laughter erupted. After thoroughly humiliating me, they finally handed me some Flagyl for my gut and Imodium to slow the flood, telling me not to come back unless I had a gunshot wound or broken bone. I left the hospital as fast as I could, my dignity barely intact. On my way to the bus stop across the street, I was just about to step onto the curb when I felt a fart coming. Thinking nothing of it, I let it rip. Instantly, it was not a fart. A gallon of liquid shit exploded out of me, filling my pants, soaking my boots, and pooling on the asphalt. I froze in horror, stuck mid-step in a twisted Captain Morgan pose, as the hot mess poured out around me. As I stood there, mortified, a bus pulled up. The Pakistani driver opened the door and called out, "Come on, buddy, let's go." I turned to him, my voice trembling, and said, "Nah man, just leave." But he wasn't having it. "Why are you standing at the bus stop if you don't want to get on? That makes no sense," he said, oblivious to the nightmare unfolding in front of him. The passengers on the bus had a clear view of my situation, and I could hear them laughing and pointing. The driver kept pushing, so I snapped, "Just go, please." He flipped me off, muttered something, closed the door, and drove off. I was left standing there, alone, in a growing pool of shame. The US Embassy, where I was staying, was about a mile away. With no other option, I started the longest walk of my life. Every step squished, leaving a trail of liquid shit behind me. By the time I reached the embassy checkpoint, I was dreading the next hurdle, the Marines. Only 10 people were allowed into the airlock-like room at a time for security screening. I queued up, praying they wouldn't notice the smell. When it was my turn, I entered the airlock, and one of the Marines immediately exclaimed, "Damn, who ripped one?" I raised my hand sheepishly. "It's worse than that," I admitted. I had an accident." The Marine walked over, sniffed, and recoiled. "Dude, you're leaking shit everywhere. What the hell, man? Someone has to clean this up." The other 9 people in the room stared, some gagging, others laughing. I begged them to let me through quickly, but they refused. "Oh no," one said. "You're getting searched like everyone else, McNasty." They played rock, paper, scissors to decide who had to frisk me. When the loser reluctantly donned gloves and patted me down, I could hear people dry heaving behind me. After what felt like an eternity, the door finally opened, and I was free to walk the last 400 yards to my trailer. When I got there, I tried to be quiet to avoid waking my roommate. No luck. He woke up, sniffed the air, and groggily asked, "What's that smell? Did you shit yourself or something?" His half-joking tone quickly turned to horror as he saw the aftermath. "Oh my God," he said, gagging. I apologized, promised to clean it up, and headed to the shower, fully clothed. It took ages to rinse myself and my fouled clothes. Afterward, I mopped the floor and bundled my uniform into a plastic bag. My boots, however, were beyond saving. I tossed them into a dumpster on my way to the dry cleaners. Along the way, I noticed bits of my trail still visible on the ground, a fresh wave of humiliation washing over me. At the dry cleaners, The clerk asked why my uniform was wet. I lied, saying I'd accidentally put it in the wash and left it in a bag too long. He sniffed and said, "No, my friend, that smells like shit." Defeated, I snapped, "Can you just clean it, please? I've had a really bad day." He shrugged and said, "Okay, but don't be such an asshole." That day in Baghdad, worst day of my life. Story 7. 2 seniors at my high school decided to pull a prank one Friday morning that they thought would be hilarious. Armed with their Beta F-150 and an immature sense of humor, they planned a drive-by mooning to impress a group of popular girls hanging out in the parking lot. This wasn't their first rodeo. They had done this before and had their routine down to a science. As they approached their unsuspecting targets, the driver honked the horn. Right on cue, the passenger dropped his pants and stuck his bare ass out the window, showcasing what he thought was comedic brilliance. But this time, he had an idea to make it even funnier. He felt a fart brewing and decided to add some auditory and olfactory effects to their prank. With perfect timing, he let it rip. Here's where it all went disastrously wrong. The previous day had been senior ditch day, and the passenger had spent it drinking heavily, so much so that he passed out multiple times. Unbeknownst to him, his body wasn't just holding gas. When he pushed out what he thought was a harmless fart, he unleashed a full-blown torrent of bile and diarrhea in a spectacular high-pressure geyser. From 5 feet away and at perfect eye level, the unfortunate girls took the brunt of the attack. The first girl managed to dodge most of the mess, but the other 2 were not so lucky. They were hit directly. The parking lot erupted in chaos. Screaming, crying, retching, and spectators laughing and gagging in equal measure. The pranksters' plan to impress quickly turned into a horror show. Needless to say, that morning became the stuff of legend for all the wrong reasons. Story 8. It was junior year in high school, first period theology, Catholic school, and I was exhausted ironically, given the subject matter. There was a cute blonde sitting in front of me, and an even cuter redhead behind me. Despite my fatigue, I managed to flirt with both of them before class started, focusing more on the redhead, because I was feeling particularly confident that morning. Life was good. When class began, feeling satisfied with my efforts, I decided to put my head down and take a nap. I descended into the deepest, most blissful in-class slumber imaginable. Everything was going great until it wasn't. About halfway through class, I was jolted awake by the most ungodly sound imaginable. It was a deep, guttural bear fart. For a second, in my sleepy stupor, I raised my head and scanned the room, wondering who could have been responsible for such an unholy noise. The entire class, including the teacher, was staring in my direction. Still half asleep and unconcerned, I put my head back down, but just as I was settling in, it hit me. Oh my God, it was me. I had farted myself awake. Not just a little toot, either my desk had vibrated from the sheer force. The realization filled me with dread as I dared a glance at the redhead behind me. Her expression said it all. She'd definitely heard it, probably smelled it too. Needless to say, that was the last time I flirted with the blonde, the redhead, or anyone in that class. My reign as the guy who farted himself awake was set in stone. Story 9. Throughout my years in elementary and high school, I was hopelessly in love with a girl, a radiant redhead with stunning green eyes, extraordinary intelligence, and a kindness that could warm the coldest heart. She was, to me, perfection personified. But we came from different worlds. Our school was deeply cliquey, and I didn't fit into hers. I was the quiet, greasy-haired kid with a big nose and an affinity for the wrong crowd. She was untouchable. One day, after a grueling set of exams that everyone knew could shape our futures, I sat outside reviewing my answers, trying to stave off the anxiety of what I might have gotten wrong. That's when he showed up. My tormentor, the school's golden boy, star athlete, adored by teachers, and of course, also infatuated with her. From day one, he seemed to have a vendetta against me, taking every opportunity to make my life hell. This day was no different. He and one of his cronies cornered me, hurling insults and taunts while everyone else watched, either laughing or pretending not to notice. I tried to defend myself, but my words held no weight. Just another day in my endless misery. Then she stepped in. She yelled at him to stop, her voice cutting through the crowd like a knife. For a moment, I thought I'd been saved, but I was so consumed by rage at him, at the world, and, inexplicably, at her that I lashed out in the most petty, unforgivable way. I called her a monster. The laughter stopped. The look on her face will haunt me forever, a mixture of shock, hurt, and disappointment. She never spoke to me the same way again, and I knew I'd destroyed any chance, however slim, that I might have had with her. Years passed, we graduated. She married him. They had a child together. And then, fate dealt its cruel hand. They both died, leaving that child behind. Now, here I am, a teacher, and that child sits in my classroom. Story 10. One time, I parked my car on the street and ran into a theater to drop off a job application. The parking area was a small lot near the dumpster, connected to the theater by a narrow alley. My dad was in the car yelling at me to hurry up, so I sprinted through the alley, not noticing the oil slicks on the ground. I was in full stride when slip. My feet flew out from under me. Somehow, I caught myself before hitting the ground completely, but my stumble wasn't exactly subtle. As I regained my balance, I heard the loudest laughter from behind me. Turning to look, I saw a car full of women stopped on the street, their windows down, and all of them laughing so hard they were nearly in tears. They had seen the whole thing. I dusted myself off, smiled as charismatically as I could, and kept running. I quickly dropped off the application and headed back out through the same alley, trying to salvage what was left of my dignity. That's when I saw the same group of women walking toward me, clearly having parked to deliver a follow-up to my moment of public embarrassment. They tried to stifle their laughter as they approached, but it was hopeless. They burst out again, and one of them managed to say through the giggles, "I'm so sorry you fell, but that was the funniest thing I've ever seen. Are you okay? You were so graceful with it. It was like watching a ballerina fall. You went down, but it looked like you didn't even touch the ground." All I could do was laugh with them and say, "Well, I guess if I had to fall, at least I did it with style." My pride may have been bruised, but at least I left an impression. And that's a wrap on tonight's collection of hilariously awkward and painfully embarrassing stories. If you had a laugh or maybe just a flashback to your own cringe-worthy moments, don't forget to subscribe to Pandas Nightmares for more unforgettable tales. Hit the like button, follow for updates, and check out my other videos for even more entertaining content. And one last reminder, if you can, please consider supporting my dad's medical treatment through the GoFundMe link in the description. Your kindness and generosity means so much to me. Thank you for watching, and remember, everyone has their embarrassing moments, but they're the stories we laugh at the most later on. Stay kind, stay confident, and I'll see you in the next nightmare.